He is Secretary Krishnamurti Foundation, Varanasi. So there are a lot of questions arise after this 3-day conference has given us, and there are certain questions to be asked.
Sure.
Sir, how was your experience in the conference?
It's very limited right now. I was very impressed with your setup here, the building and everything. I felt that maybe we were put too high up on the dais. We should have been more or less only slightly higher up than the audience. But it was interesting that you have collected a international group of people who are interested in the role of spirituality in different aspects of our life. Ultimately, the quality of the conference depends on the quality of the deliberations and the speakers. And since I have participated only in the first session, I cannot comment on that.
Sir, you already deliver the most important part. We wanted to ask you about the spirituality. There are a lot of definitions are coming up. How do you define spirituality?
Yes, it is. The word has been used in several different senses. People talk about occult phenomena and telepathic messages and psychic effects and so on also as spirituality. But I'm not using it in that sense. I'm using it in the sense of self-knowledge, freeing the consciousness of all the negative emotions. What in religious quest is called liberation. Yeah. And that requires a lot of self-inquiry and perception of what is true and what is false. And that perception brings about a real change. Not just our knowledge which only changes our ideas. It doesn't transform our consciousness. So to me, spirituality is tantamount to ending all the disorder in our consciousness, which is also synonymous with wisdom, which is synonymous also with the quest for truth. And particularly in India, this has been a very major quest as part of every religion. In Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Jainism, there may have been belief, there is worship and ritual, but there was always this spirit of inquiry into what is true and what is false, what is reality, and the freedom from the ego, the liberation.
The way economic meltdown, the crisis after post-globalization, and the world is now making hue and cry. There is both in Africa, then in Europe. US already suffered. Do you think that globalization is avoiding spiritualism? That's why this problem is coming up?
You see, globalization is much more than just making the economy global. It is a question of making your mind global, so that deeply you realize that the other human being is very much like you, except in his training. And that's a very small part of that human being. If I may elaborate on that a little bit, a human being is his body and his consciousness. Are we really very different in our body? You ask a medical scientist or biologist, and he'll tell you, no, everything functions the same way. Are we very different in our consciousness? Doesn't every human being have fear, have sorrow, wants success, avoids failure, has problems of desire, attachment, jealousy? So there also we are same, emotionally and so on. So why do we feel very different from each other? It's just because we have all kinds of notions about life, all kinds of opinions, many of which are simply picked up from our culture. They are not necessarily true. We haven't examined them. We have identified ourselves with them, and then we call ourselves Hindu or Indian and so on, without having this deep understanding which even in Hinduism and Buddhism it was said that the other man is yourself. We have just made it into a concept or a slogan, but we have not, that is the truth. And the fact that I don't see the truth is because of all these illusions to which the mind is attached. So to discover, to end these illusions is part of the spiritual quest. Then you perceive that there is no great difference between, we are just superficially different from each other. We stand on the same ground.
Basically, there a question arises that individual differences in their learning process, in their development process, that makes a bigger difference throughout world. It is happening. What's your opinion?
Actually, if you look at nature, no two trees are alike. You plant two trees in your garden, one will grow differently from the other. This idea that everything must grow in a particular way. If I say a mango tree must grow with all its branches growing exactly by the same amount in every direction, so that every mango tree will be spherical, something is wrong with my thinking, not with the mango tree, right? So what is true of trees is also true of human beings. Every human being is different from every other human being. Intelligence manifests in him differently. And for me to demand that it must all lie in a particular direction is a wrong attitude or a wrong approach to a human being. So spirituality teaches you, you must respect that child as another living entity and help him to grow in whatever direction he wants to grow. That's natural to him. Not force him into a preconceived notion or a frame in which you are trying to fit him. That's a violence already in that. So that's why all this wisdom is necessary, otherwise all our definitions also go wrong. I am not even sure we have a deep understanding of what love is, for example. Though we all talk about love and we say love is the greatest thing and so on, do we really know what love is?
Means when you talk about individual learning process, you already told about value education system. Long deliberation was given. What exactly you want to say, value education, or in education there must be certain perceptible changes so that individual may develop in the right manner.
Yes, but values cannot be transmitted like knowledge or like ideas. I mean, theft doesn't occur because people don't know or have not been told sufficient number of times that they should not steal. It occurs because there is greed in that, in the consciousness of that man. So if you look into deeper causation, it starts from consciousness. There is greed. I want to do things for my own profit, and I am not realizing that I am connected with the whole, and that if I function selfishly, it is bad for the whole and therefore bad for me. It's like, to give a very elementary example, if I take a banana and I want to throw the peel just here because I don't want to take the trouble of going up to the garbage can, then if that is right for me, then it's right for everybody else. If everybody did that, we would all live in a very dirty campus. Right? That's the consequence. The same is true of being criminal or shouting at people or something. If that you feel that is right for you, it's right for everybody else, and it has consequences in society. So if we realize that right and wrong is not something defined from religion or from some moral code by some pope, but that which is healthy for the whole, that action is right. And that action which is selfish, which is only for my own benefit, ignoring everybody else, is wrong. And that requires intelligence to know, to differentiate this. Intelligence, I would say wisdom. It needs wisdom.
You talked about greed, and now it is called consumerism. Is consumerism and greed is the reason for all these problems?
Yes, but they are an effect. The problem is deeper. What is the source of consumerism. That man is seeking to make profit, so he is wanting me to buy and more things so that he makes profit. And I don't need those things, but he must first create that feeling of need. So he advertises, he shows on television, tempts me, traps me, then sells it mainly for making his own profit for his own company, etc. So he is not really caring for me. He is only interested in his own profit, which is self-interest. I pursue this consumerism because I am bored in my life. And I like to have these gadgets and I want to buy things because that excites me and so on. So it takes me away from my boredom. And that is my self-interest. Therefore I fall for that temptation. So both people are acting out of their own ego. Right? So the ego is the central problem. The ego in both the man who is selling and the ego in the man who is the consumer is the problem. And so if you really want to solve this problem, you have to understand this whole thing of desire. There is no ending to desire. You can see that people who have acquired a lot don't have less desires than people who are poor. Their desires are different, but desire is a problem for man. Because when you have desire, either it will be fulfilled or it will not be fulfilled. When it is not fulfilled, it will create frustration, it will create depression. And when it is fulfilled, then it creates stagnation because that desire was energizing you and that energy is now gone because the desire is fulfilled. Both are a problem. The boredom is also a problem and the frustration is also a problem. So when you see something like this, it's a vicious circle. And you're trapped in this vicious circle, then it tells you you're approaching this whole thing wrongly. Right? So you have to find out, is it possible to live entirely differently and not live with desire? So you have to ask a deeper question. Does happiness lie in the fulfillment of desire? It doesn't. But it requires a lot of understanding before you feel that. Otherwise immediately you feel, if I fulfill this desire, I'll be happy. So you find everybody is working very hard, saying, once I build this factory, I will be happy. The unmarried man is saying, once I marry, I will become happy. The student is saying, once I get my degree, I will be happy. They are all positing happiness in the future. Happiness does not lie in the future. You will not be happy in future for the same reasons you are not happy now. Because it's not a matter of how much you have and what all desires are fulfilled. It's a matter of how you look across the line between what you have and what you don't have.
So one thing is always, especially in Indian context, it is said, was said, I should say now, a simple living, high thinking. Where it has gone?
You see, sir, our understanding of simple living is also too superficial. Simple living is not just a question of having a few things and sleeping on the floor and not eating much and so on. That's just a physical level. You may have a very complicated mind within. If you're feeling jealous, you compare yourself with others, you want to achieve this, you have all this. You are a very complicated person. You are not simple. Though you may externally wear only khadi and so on. So we have to give up these external notions. Simplicity inwardly, it requires a lot of understanding and wisdom. Without that you cannot practice it. Indeed, I would go a step further and say, virtue cannot be practiced. Virtue is a state of being. If you are simple, there is simplicity. But you cannot decide to be simple. You cannot decide to love. You cannot decide to be peaceful. You cannot decide to be happy. The greatest things in life don't come from decision. But they can be had. They are a byproduct of a lot of understanding. That understanding is what is called wisdom. And the beginning of that wisdom is this inquiry to discern what is true and what is false, so that the false ends in the mind. And you live not with some kind of notions created by the human mind, but in the actual world of what is.
There is a need in education, and you already focused on during your deliberation, Education is a deciding factor now. It has been considered. What do you? What's your suggestion in education? What should be done in education?
To me, it is most important to create a learning mind, not a knowing mind. Not a learning mind is wanting to discover, wanting to find out more. Whether it is in science, whether it is in society, whether it is in religion, whether it is in my psyche, across the board. So an inquiring, questioning mind, learning mind, not proud of what it has, what it knows, but wanting to discover something more new. That whole outlook or attitude is a mind that is then both scientific and religious at the same time. So to me, religion is also a learning about oneself. And science is also a learning about the external world. There is no contradiction between the two. And we need to have this in both directions. We have promoted inquiry and non-authoritarianism and so on in science, and therefore we have progressed a lot in science. But over here, we accept authority, we say we must obey, you must just follow the guru and so on, and no inquiry. Inquiry has been relegated. Actually, the essence of religion is inquiry, because from that comes wisdom. You will not come upon wisdom.
We should have these kinds of things to be incorporated in education, in our education system.
If I care about my student, I must point out both inquiries. Let him inquire in science, let him also inquire into religion. It's a little inconvenient for the adults because he'll come and ask you questions about your life. So I must also be having a learning mind. Then I don't mind questions, because if you ask me questions, I learn too. So we learn together. So you are your own student and you are your own teacher too. That's what we learned from Krishnamurti.
When we talk about religion and spiritualism, is it a different thing or it is just same thing but used in a different manner?
The emphasis is very different. In religion, the emphasis is on belief, on worship, on rituals, and following a certain moral code. In spirituality, the emphasis is on discovering what is true and what is false and unlearning the false. It's not just a question of doing this or doing that. That's a very personal thing. Whether you go to the temple or you go to a mosque or you go to a church to pray or you do it at home, it's a personal thing. It doesn't matter. But how you conduct yourself, how you relate with people, that matters. So I would like to counter your question with a question.
Yes.
If a man was wise and kind and non-violent and loving and compassionate, what difference does it make whether he is Hindu or Muslim or Christian or an atheist? And if a man is cruel and narrow-minded and selfish and hateful and arrogant, what difference does it make whether he is Hindu or Muslim or Christian or an atheist? So the very fact that we have given so much importance to the affiliation of a human being to a particular religion is itself an illusion. It's not an important thing about that man. You might as well ask which club he goes to play tennis. It doesn't matter.
Sir, this is an initiative taken by our School of Management Sciences. What do you want to say?
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I only want to point out that this inquiry is not easy. It is far more difficult than the scientific inquiry, but it's also far more necessary. Just because we attempt it, it is no guarantee that we will achieve the results. But if you don't attempt it, I can guarantee you won't have any results.
From here, what is the next level where we should move from here?
In practical terms?
Yes, in practical terms.
Well, you have a management institute and you must be teaching all aspects of management and so on. Can you also have a core course where every student who goes through your institute is also introduced to these questions? It's not necessary to have an examination or give grades and so on, but it's important to expose them to these questions of life. And answers, let them search for themselves, but get them to discuss, and you have to allow time for that, so that they begin to have a mind which is inquiring in this field also. I feel that this field has got closed because we have just equated spirituality with having some belief and telling them do this and don't do this, and nobody is able to do that. I mean, 2000 years Christians have been repeating love your neighbor. Do they love their neighbor? So it doesn't come by repetition of some idea or your decision or belief. You can't decide to love somebody. So find out how what love is and what prevents it from happening in you. It's an inquiry. Requires a lot of work and wisdom to come upon that.
One last question. How to inculcate value and ethics as a part of syllabus in any B school?
You can't teach value and ethics through syllabus, because sermonizing doesn't work. We are not what we are because we have not heard enough sermons. If you speak such high lofty things and you don't live that way, the child sees that. He sees that, he will learn that you must speak like this when you speak and you must live like that when you live, which means if you are a hypocrite, you will teach him to be a hypocrite. So that's what in English there is a saying, that you may teach what you speak, but you educate what you are. Right? So if you, in a deep sense, the only way to do it is to have a community of people who are living together and all engaging in this inquiry and wanting to live with those values, failing but addressing the issue together, like that. That will itself generate a certain atmosphere which then educates the student. This education, ethical education, is not something which can just be given as do's and don'ts. Otherwise, I mean, why have all the religions failed? All the religions have failed because man has not become non-violent. Everybody follows some religion or the other, but they are all violent, they are greedy, so it hasn't ended any of that. So virtue is not come by so easily. It's a byproduct of learning. This learning, what is true and what is false. And without wisdom, you cannot have ethics and virtue. It will always go wrong, whichever way you do it. So there is no shortcut, in other words. There is no shortcut. I know the government wants to just introduce something, have a syllabus. I think that's, it's okay. You will give them some thoughts and some ideas, but deeply, if you are really interested in making this happen, it takes much more than that.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Thank you very much.